On Tuesday afternoon, November 7th, my daughter opened her front door, looked at me standing there with my single suitcase, and said, "Mom, Brandon's mother is coming this weekend. There's just no room." "I'm Grace Williams. I'm 62 years old." I said, "Okay." Then I went back to my car and decided to do something I never thought I'd have to do at my age. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. Let me back up 3 months, because that's when everything started falling apart. On August 15th, 2024, I stood in my office on the 8th floor of the Riverside Business Center in downtown Atlanta, looking at the letter from my insurance company. The words blurred together, but 3 phrases stood out clear as day. Claim denied, contractual exclusion, no coverage available. I'd spent 38 years building Williams Catering from absolutely nothing. Started in 1986 with $800, a used commercial stove I bought at an estate sale, and a dream of bringing people together through food. My grandmother had been a cook in Mississippi, and she'd taught me that food wasn't just about eating. It was about love, about community, about making people feel seen. By 2024, Williams Catering had 17 employees. We did weddings, corporate events, fundraisers. Last year alone, we'd catered 143 events. I knew that number by heart because I kept a journal, writing down every single event, every bride's smile, every thank you card. The Morrison wedding was supposed to be event number 87 for 2024. It was a beautiful June wedding. 220 guests at the Piedmont Garden Pavilion. The bride, Emily Morrison, had hired us 9 months in advance. She wanted Southern comfort food with an upscale twist, my specialty. Shrimp and grits with truffle oil, braised short ribs, collard greens with smoked turkey, peach cobbler made from my grandmother's recipe. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. On June 23rd, 47 guests got sick. Not just a little sick, hospitalized sick. Food poisoning. The health department came in, shut us down, investigated every single thing. They traced it back to the oysters. The oysters I didn't order. See, my regular seafood supplier, Patterson Seafood out of Savannah, had a shipment delay that week. My sous chef, without telling me, had ordered from a cheaper supplier he found online. Those oysters had been sitting in inadequate refrigeration for who knows how long. The Morrisons sued for $1.2 million. Medical bills, emotional distress, ruined wedding memories. Their lawyer was good, very good. He painted me as a negligent business owner who cut corners to save money. That wasn't true. I'd never cut corners in 38 years. But the truth didn't matter once the insurance company found their loophole. Clause 17.3.b. Coverage excludes incidents arising from the use of non-approved vendors. Because my sous chef had ordered from an unapproved supplier, they denied the entire claim. I sold the business equipment in July. 8 commercial ovens, 3 industrial refrigerators, all my pots and pans, the china, the linens. Everything went to a restaurant supplier for $32,000. That money went to the lawyers. The business closed on August 1st. I had to let all 17 employees go. I still remember their faces. Teresa, who'd been with me for 14 years. Marcus, who I'd trained from scratch when he was just 19 years old. Each one of them had families, mortgages, children in school. I lost my house on September 15th. Not because I'd missed payments. I'd never missed a payment in 35 years of home ownership. But the court judgment was $1.2 million, and they could attach liens to everything I owned. The bank didn't care that I'd paid faithfully since 1989. They saw the judgment and immediately started foreclosure proceedings. The house at 847 Maple Street sold for $290,000. After the mortgage payoff and the legal fees, I got $23,000. I rented a small apartment on the south side for $950 a month. I thought I could make it work. Find a job, start over, rebuild. But I'm 62 years old. I have type 2 diabetes that requires medication. The prescriptions cost $340 a month even with insurance. And I learned very quickly that nobody wants to hire a 62-year-old woman with a failed business on her resume. I applied to 47 jobs between September and November. Restaurant manager positions, catering coordinator roles, even front desk receptionist work. I got 3 interviews, 0 offers. By November 1st, I had $387 in my bank account. On November 3rd, my landlord told me he was selling the building. I had to be out by November 15th. He'd give me back my security deposit, but that was only $950. Not enough for first month, last month, and deposit on a new place. That's how I ended up at my daughter's house on November 7th, carrying everything I owned in one suitcase and a garbage bag. Jessica lives at 1847 Brookhaven Drive in the Oak Hills subdivision. It's a beautiful neighborhood, the kind of place where every lawn is perfectly manicured, every house has a 2-car garage, and every family looks successful from the outside. Her house is a colonial-style home with white columns and black shutters. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a finished basement. When she and Brandon bought it 6 years ago, I gave them $30,000 for the down payment. I'd been saving that money for my retirement, but Jessica was my only child. I wanted to help her start her life right. I also catered their wedding for free. That saved them $15,000. And when Sophie was born 7 years ago, I took care of her 3 days a week for 2 years while Jessica went back to work. I never charged them a dime for childcare. I'm not saying this to make Jessica look bad. I'm just saying it so you understand why I thought, maybe foolishly, that she would help me when I needed it. I'd called ahead. The conversation went like this. "Hey, baby, it's Mom." "Hi, Mom. What's up?" She sounded distracted. "I need to ask you something. My landlord is selling the building, and I need to find somewhere to stay for a little while, just until I can figure things out. Maybe a week or 2? There was a pause. A long pause. "Mom, let me talk to Brandon. Can I call you back?" "Of course, sweetheart." She called back 3 hours later. "Mom, we talked about it. You can come stay for a few days, but Brandon's mother might be visiting this weekend, so it might be tight." "That's fine. I won't be any trouble. I promise." "Okay, come on Tuesday, after work." That Tuesday was November 7th. I arrived at 4:30 in the afternoon. I knew Jessica got home around 4 o'clock, so I timed it carefully. I didn't want to show up when nobody was home. Brandon answered the door. Brandon is 37 years old. He's an investment banker at Mercer & Doyle downtown. He's tall, always well-dressed, always looks like he just stepped out of a Brooks Brothers catalog. He and Jessica have been married for 8 years. "Grace," he said, looking surprised. "I thought you were coming this weekend." "I told Jessica Tuesday," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is this a bad time?" Before he could answer, Jessica appeared behind him. My daughter is 35 years old. She looks like her father. Same high cheekbones, same warm brown eyes, same smile that could light up a room. She was wearing expensive athleisure wear, the kind that costs $200 for yoga pants and a matching top. "Mom!" She didn't move to hug me. "I thought you said this weekend." "I said Tuesday, baby. I'm sorry if there was confusion." She glanced at Brandon. It was a look I recognized, the kind of silent communication that happens between married people. I'd had that same wordless conversation with my husband Robert 1,000 times before he died. "The thing is, Mom," Jessica said, and her voice had taken on this careful, measured tone, like she was talking to a difficult client. "Brandon's mother really is coming this weekend, and our guest room is pretty small, with all her medical equipment and everything. Brandon's mother, Helen, lives 20 minutes away in Dunwoody. She's 68 years old and plays tennis 3 times a week. She doesn't have any medical equipment except reading glasses." I knew this. Jessica knew I knew this. "I could sleep on the couch," I offered. "I really won't be any trouble. I'm gone all day looking for work and—" "Mom!" Jessica cut me off. She stepped outside and closed the door behind her, leaving Brandon inside. "Can we talk honestly?" "Of course. This isn't a good time for us. Brandon's going through a really stressful period at work. There's been talk of layoffs, and he's been putting in 80-hour weeks trying to prove his value. We're maxed out emotionally." I looked at my daughter. She was avoiding eye contact, focusing on a spot somewhere over my left shoulder. "Jessica, I'm your mother. I'm not asking to move in permanently, just a week or 2 while I find somewhere affordable." "That's just it, Mom. I don't think it'll be a week or 2. I think you're in a really difficult situation, and we can't be the solution to that. We have our own lives, our own pressures." Something cold settled in my chest. Are you telling me I can't stay here? Not even for a few nights? I'm saying that we think it's better if you find another arrangement. There's an extended stay hotel on Route 7, corporate rates. Brandon says it's not too expensive. "Not too expensive." I had $387 in my bank account. Jessica, I said quietly, I slept in my car last night because I had nowhere else to go. Her expression flickered. Just for a second, I saw something that might have been guilt or shame, but then it hardened again. Mom, I'm sorry you're going through this. I really am. But you made certain choices with your business, and those choices have consequences. Brandon and I can't fix that for you. Choices. As if I'd chosen to have my sous chef order contaminated oysters. As if I'd chosen to have my insurance company find a loophole. Behind the front door, I heard a sound. Small footsteps running. Grandma Grace! The door flew open and Sophie burst out. She's 7 years old, with braids and the biggest smile. Grandma, are you coming to stay with us? Jessica moved quickly, putting herself between Sophie and me. Sweetheart, Grandma can't stay right now. Go back inside with Daddy. But why? We have the extra room and… Sophie, inside, now. The harshness in Jessica's voice made Sophie's face crumple. She looked at me, confused, and then ran back inside. I heard her crying as Brandon led her away. I stood there on the porch I'd helped them furnish, in the house I'd helped them buy, and felt something break inside me that had nothing to do with money or homes. I see, I said. Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not making anything hard, baby. You've made your decision. I respect that. I turned to walk back to my car. Behind me, I heard Jessica say, Once you get settled somewhere, we'd love to have you over for dinner. Maybe in a few weeks? I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. The Honda Civic I was driving was 17 years old. I'd bought it used in 2007 for $8,000. It had 187,000 miles on it, a crack in the windshield, and a passenger door that didn't lock properly. But it was paid off, and it ran. I sat in their driveway for 5 full minutes, watching their house. Through the living room window, I could see Jessica talking to Brandon. She was gesturing, explaining. He nodded. Then I saw Sophie at her bedroom window upstairs. She was watching me, her small face pressed against the glass. I waved at her. She waved back. Then I started the car and drove away. The extended stay hotel on Route 7 was called the Oakmont Suites. I pulled into the parking lot and checked their rates on the sign out front. Daily rate, $89. Weekly rate, $450. Monthly rate, $1,200. I had $387. The Hampton Inn was fully booked, some medical conference in town. So was the Holiday Inn Express. The Motel 6 wanted $65 a night, and when I explained I might need to stay for a week, they required full payment up front. By 7 p.m., I was parked behind a 24-hour diner called Martha's, trying to figure out how to sleep in a Honda Civic. The diner was on Highway 78, just outside the city proper. The parking lot had overhead lights that stayed on all night, which felt safer than some dark side street. I could see the waitresses moving around inside, and that felt comforting somehow, like I wasn't completely alone. I'd brought a blanket and a pillow. The back seat of the Civic was barely big enough for me to lie down, and I'm only 5 feet 4 inches. I tried to get comfortable, but every position hurt something. My back, my hip, my neck. Around 8 p.m., I went inside the diner to use the bathroom. The waitress, her name tag said Doreen, smiled at me. Just one tonight, honey? Actually, I just need to use the restroom. Is that okay? Of course. You take your time. The bathroom was clean, thank God. I washed my face with hand soap, combed my gray hair with my fingers, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked old. Really old. The stress of the past 3 months had carved lines I didn't remember having before. I bought a small coffee for $2.50. Doreen gave me a refill without charging. Rough day? She asked. You could say that. Well, you take care of yourself. We're here all night if you need anything. Back in the car, I tried to sleep. But every time headlights swept across my windshield, I woke up. Every time a car door slammed, I jolted awake. Every time someone walked past, my heart raced. I thought about Robert. He'd died 10 years ago, suddenly, from a massive stroke. He was 58 years old. We'd been married for 32 years. I'd loved him since I was 20 years old. Robert, I whispered into the darkness of the car. What do I do? What would you tell me to do? But Robert wasn't there to answer. Around 2 a.m., I finally dozed off. At 9:47 a.m. on November 8th, My phone rang. I'd been awake since 6 o'clock when the morning shift arrived at the diner and the parking lot had gotten busy. I'd gone back inside to use the bathroom, wash up as best I could. I bought a small breakfast, 1 egg, 1 piece of toast, 1 slice of bacon, for $4.75. Doreen had given me more free coffee refills. The number on my phone wasn't one I recognized. A 404 area code, Atlanta. After everything that had happened, part of me wanted to ignore it. But desperation makes you answer calls you might otherwise avoid. Hello? Mrs. Williams? The voice was male, formal, with a precision that suggested education and professionalism. My name is Thomas Ashford. I'm calling on behalf of my employer, Mrs. Eleanor Hartfield. She would very much like to meet with you tomorrow morning, if you're available. I shifted in the driver's seat, trying to work out a cramp in my neck. I'm sorry, who? Eleanor Hartfield, he repeated patiently. She's requested a meeting with you at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. It's quite urgent, I'm afraid. The name meant nothing to me. In 38 years of catering, you meet thousands of people. But Eleanor Hartfield wasn't ringing any bells. I think you might have the wrong person, I said. There was a pause, then the sound of papers rustling. Grace Marie Williams, born March 3rd, 1962, previously owner of Williams Catering? My stomach tightened. How do you know about my business? Mrs. Hartfield has been quite specific about wanting to meet with you. She's not in the best of health, and time is rather precious. Would you be available tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I looked around the parking lot. 12 hours ago, I'd been turned away by my own daughter. Now a complete stranger was asking for a meeting like I was someone important. What does she want? I'm afraid I can't discuss the details over the phone, but I can tell you that Mrs. Hartfield is prepared to compensate you for your time. Would $300 be sufficient for a 1-hour meeting? $300. That was more money than I'd seen in weeks. That was groceries. That was medication. That was hope. I thought about saying no. Thought about how strange this all was. But then I thought about the $387 in my account, about sleeping in my car, about the look on Jessica's face when she'd turned me away. Where? I asked. The Hartfield Estate, 2847 Lakeview Drive in Millbrook. I'll send you the address. Shall we say 10 a.m.? I'll be there. Excellent. Mrs. Hartfield looks forward to meeting you, Mrs. Williams. After he hung up, I sat staring at my phone. The address came through a few minutes later. I plugged it into Google Maps. Millbrook. That was where the houses started at $2 million and went up from there. I tried to remember if I'd ever catered an event for anyone named Hartfield. Nothing came to mind. But 38 years is a long time, and I'd done so many events. For the rest of that day, I sat in that parking lot, trying not to think too hard about what tomorrow might bring. I didn't want to get my hopes up. I'd learned recently that hope could be a dangerous thing. That night, I tried to sleep in the car again. It wasn't any easier the second time. But I kept thinking, tomorrow, 10 a.m., 2847 Lakeview Drive. Tomorrow, something might change. I didn't know how right I was. November 9th started at 5:30 a.m. when a delivery truck's backup alarm woke me from the shallow sleep I'd finally managed around 4. My neck hurt. My back hurt. My left hip felt like someone had driven a nail into it. I was 62 years old, and my body was reminding me that Honda Civics were not designed for sleeping. I gave up trying to get comfortable and went inside Martha's diner. Doreen was working again. She smiled when she saw me, but this time there was something else in her expression. Recognition, maybe? Or pity. Morning, honey. Coffee? Please, and could I use your bathroom? Of course. You take your time. In the bathroom, I did my best to make myself presentable. I had one nice outfit left, a navy blue dress and a beige cardigan that I'd worn to church services. They were wrinkled from being in my suitcase, but they were clean. I washed up using hand soap and paper towels, brushed my teeth with the travel toothbrush I kept in my purse, tried to do something with my gray hair, which had developed a mind of its own after 2 nights in a car. The woman in the mirror looked tired, worn, but she was still standing. I thought about Eleanor Hartfield and her $300 offer. Part of me wondered if this was some kind of scam, if I'd show up at this mansion and find out it was a timeshare presentation or a multi-level marketing scheme. But what choice did I have? I bought a small breakfast, scrambled eggs and wheat toast, $5.25. I had $379.75 left in my account. Every dollar mattered now. At 9:15 a.m., I left the diner and started driving toward Millbrook. The neighborhoods changed as I drove north. First came the regular suburban areas, ranch houses and split levels with minivans in the driveways. Then the houses got bigger. 2 stories became 3. Attached garages became detached. Lawns went from nice to immaculate. By the time I reached Millbrook, I was in a different world. Lakeview Drive was tree-lined with oaks that must have been 100 years old. The houses here weren't just big, they were estates, each one set back from the road, each one surrounded by enough land that you couldn't see your neighbors' houses unless you really looked. Number 2847 appeared on my right. The gate wasn't ornate or flashy, just a simple wrought iron design with an intercom system. Before I could even press the button, a voice came through the speaker. "Mrs. Williams, please proceed to the main house. Follow the drive all the way around." The gate swung open smoothly. The driveway curved through what looked like a park. Ancient oak trees formed a canopy overhead, their branches heavy with Spanish moss. I passed gardens that were still green despite it being November. Someone was clearly taking very good care of this place. The house came into view, and I had to catch my breath. It wasn't a mansion like you see in the movies, not some ridiculous 20,000 square foot monstrosity with marble columns everywhere. But it was beautiful. A brick colonial, maybe 8,000 square feet, with white trim and black shutters. Elegant, dignified. The kind of house that said old money rather than new money. I parked my Honda between a silver Mercedes and a black Lexus, feeling like I'd brought a bicycle to a luxury car show. A man was waiting for me at the front door. "Mrs. Williams." He extended his hand. "I'm Thomas Ashford." Thomas was probably in his late 50s. Tall, thin, with gray hair and a dark suit that fit him perfectly. His handshake was firm but brief, professional. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. Mrs. Hartfield is waiting for you in the sunroom. Please follow me." He led me inside, and I tried not to gape. The entryway had hardwood floors that gleamed like glass. Not the fake pre-finished stuff, real hardwood that had been maintained for decades. There were oil paintings on the walls, antique furniture that probably belonged in a museum, and fresh flowers in crystal vases. But it wasn't ostentatious. Everything was tasteful, chosen with care. This wasn't someone showing off their money. This was someone who had money and didn't need to prove it. We passed through a formal living room, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and finally arrived at what Thomas had called the sunroom. It was at the back of the house, with 3 walls of windows that looked out over a lake. The water was calm this morning, reflecting the gray November sky like a mirror. And sitting in a wheelchair by the windows, wrapped in a cream-colored shawl, was Eleanor Hartfield. She was thin, painfully thin, the kind of thinness that comes from illness rather than choice. Her white hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and even though she looked frail, her eyes were sharp. Bright blue eyes that studied me with an intensity that made me self-conscious about my wrinkled dress and my hair that wouldn't behave. "Grace Williams." Her voice was stronger than I'd expected, clear and cultured. "Thank you so much for coming. Please sit down." Thomas pulled out a chair for me, a comfortable armchair positioned so I'd be facing Eleanor. Then he quietly left the room, closing the door behind him. "Would you like some tea? Coffee?" "No, thank you, ma'am." She smiled. "Please call me Eleanor. Ma'am makes me feel ancient." "Eleanor, then." For a moment, we just looked at each other. I didn't know what to say. This woman, this stranger, had summoned me here and offered me $300 for an hour of my time, but she hadn't explained why. "I imagine you're wondering why I asked you here," she said, as if reading my mind. The thought had crossed my mind. "Tell me, Grace, do you remember a rainy evening, October 23rd, 7 years ago?" I frowned, trying to think back. 7 years ago would have been 2017. October. "I'm sorry, Route 12 just outside Millbrook, around 6 p.m. There was a terrible storm." And suddenly, like a light switch flipping, I remembered. The rain had been coming down in sheets that evening. I'd been driving home from a venue consultation at the Piedmont Garden Pavilion, exhausted after a long day. Route 12 was a winding road with steep drop-offs, and in weather like that, it was treacherous. "The accident," I said softly. Eleanor nodded. "You remember?" "There was a car. A Lexus, I think. It was in my lane, completely out of control." "That was me." The words hung in the air between us. I was hydroplaning, Eleanor continued. I'd been driving too fast, distracted by a phone call. The car just went. I couldn't control it. I remember seeing your truck coming toward me, seeing the terror in your eyes. I remembered that moment with perfect clarity now, the headlights in my lane, the split second to make a decision. Left meant head-on collision. Right meant the guardrail. You swerved, Eleanor said. You could have stayed in your lane. The impact would have been bad, but I would have taken most of the damage. Instead, you swerved right. Your truck hit the guardrail. And your car went through it. 20 feet down into Miller's Creek. I closed my eyes, seeing it again. The sound of metal screeching. My truck slamming into the guardrail, the whole vehicle shuddering from the impact. And then, in my rearview mirror, seeing the Lexus disappear over the edge. I climbed down, I said. The memory flooding back. The embankment was so muddy, I fell twice. By the time you reached my car, it was upside down in 3 feet of water. I remembered the water, ice-cold October water, soaking through my jeans as I waded in. The Lexus had been crumpled on the driver's side, pinned against rocks. Water was pouring in through the broken windows. The door was jammed, I said. I couldn't get it open. You broke the passenger window with a rock, cut your hands doing it. I looked down at my hands. There were still faint scars on my right palm, thin white lines I'd stopped noticing years ago. You pulled me out through that window, Eleanor continued, her voice thick with emotion. I was unconscious, dead weight. You got me out of the car and up that muddy embankment, and you held my head out of the water until help arrived. There were other people there, I said. 2 other cars stopped. After you. You were the first one down that embankment. You were the one who kept me alive until the ambulance got there. The paramedic told me later that if I'd been in that water for 3 more minutes, I would have drowned. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by the memories. I hadn't thought about that night in years. After the accident, my truck had been totaled, but insurance covered it. I'd been bruised and sore for a week, my hands bandaged from the glass cuts, but I'd gone back to work the following Monday like nothing had happened. Why didn't you ever contact me? Eleanor asked. After that night, I mean. You rode with me to the hospital, waited until my family arrived, and then you just left. The hospital tried to get your contact information, but you'd already gone. I thought about how to explain it. It wasn't my business to insert myself into your life. You were alive. That was what mattered. I figured you had your own family, your own life to get back to. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, studying me. Do you know what I was doing that night, Grace? Why I was driving in weather like that? I shook my head. I was running away. Her voice was soft now, almost a whisper. I'd just learned that my husband of 43 years, had been having an affair with his assistant, a woman half my age. I was 64 years old, and I'd just discovered that the man I'd built my entire life around had been lying to me for 3 years. I didn't know what to say. I was driving to my sister's house in South Carolina. I was going to leave him, file for divorce, start over, but I was crying so hard I could barely see the road, and I was going too fast, and then I lost control. She paused, looking out at the lake. The accident changed everything. While I was recovering in the hospital, my husband came clean about everything. The affair, the lies, all of it. And he begged for forgiveness, said he'd been terrified of losing me, that nearly losing me in that creek had made him realize what really mattered. Did you forgive him? I asked. Eleanor smiled sadly. Eventually. It took time, counseling, a lot of hard conversations. But yes, we had 5 more years together before he passed from a heart attack. 5 good years. Years I wouldn't have had if I'd drowned in that creek. She turned her wheelchair to face me directly. You gave me those years, Grace. You gave me the chance to rebuild my marriage, to find peace with my husband before he died. You gave me the chance to watch my grandchildren grow up, to travel, to live. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, her voice was firm now. They wouldn't have. The police report said 2 cars passed the scene before you arrived. 2 cars that saw my headlights in the creek and kept driving. I hadn't known that. Grace, I'm dying. The words were so matter-of-fact, so calm, that it took me a second to process them. I'm sorry, what? Ovarian cancer, stage 4. I was diagnosed 8 months ago. The doctors give me 6 to 8 weeks, maybe less. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Eleanor, she held up a hand. I've made my peace with it. I'm 71 years old. I've lived a full life. I've seen my children grow up, held my grandchildren, traveled the world. I'm not angry about dying. But before I go, I need to settle my debts. She reached to a side table and picked up a thick folder, handing it to me. Open it. My hands were shaking as I opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, pages and pages of them, covered in language I didn't fully understand, but I could make out certain phrases. Last will and testament of Eleanor Marie Hartfield. Primary beneficiary, Grace Marie Williams. And then numbers, big numbers. I don't understand, I whispered. It's very simple, Eleanor said. Everything I have, the house, the investments, the trust funds, all of it goes to you when I die. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair. That's impossible. You have family. You have $50 million, Eleanor said calmly. That's the total value of my estate, and it's all going to you. $50 million. I couldn't breathe. The number was so large it didn't even seem real. Eleanor, I can't accept this. I just did what any decent person would do. I pulled you out of a car. That doesn't deserve. It's not about what you deserve. It's about what I want to do with my money. And I want to give it to someone who showed me genuine kindness without wanting anything in return. My mind was racing. $50 million. That was more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. That was enough to never worry about money again, to help every person I'd ever known, to... What about your children? I asked. Eleanor's expression changed. Something harder settled into her features. I have 2 children, a son, David, and a daughter, Patricia. She reached for another folder, this one thinner. David is 48 years old. He's on his 3rd startup company, each one a bigger failure than the last. He's $200,000 in debt from bad investments and worse business decisions. He calls me once a month to ask for money. She opened the folder and showed me documents. Bank statements, loan applications, all with David's name on them. Patricia is 45. She's been married 3 times, each divorce more expensive than the last. She calls me twice a year, on my birthday and Christmas, and both times she asks for money within 5 minutes. Eleanor showed me more documents, credit card statements, shopping receipts, jewelry purchases. I'm leaving each of them $100,000, enough to start over if they choose to use it wisely, but not enough to waste. But they're your children, I said. Surely, Grace. Eleanor's voice was gentle but firm. When I was in that hospital 7 years ago, do you know how long it took for my children to visit me? I shook my head. David arrived 3 days later. He'd been in Colorado on a ski trip and couldn't change his flight. Patricia came 4 days after that. She was at a spa in Arizona and didn't want to interrupt her vacation. She paused, letting that sink in. You, a complete stranger, sat with me in the rain for 20 minutes until the ambulance arrived. You rode with me to the hospital. You waited until my family came, even though you were injured yourself. You never asked for anything. You never even told me your name. The paramedics knew it, I said weakly. But you didn't make a point of it. You didn't leave a business card. You didn't call later expecting gratitude or reward. You just helped because it was the right thing to do. Eleanor reached into her shawl and pulled out an envelope. My name was written on it in shaky handwriting. I want you to open this after I'm gone, she said. Not now. After. It's just some thoughts I want to share with you. Some advice. I took the envelope with trembling hands. Eleanor, I still don't think I can accept. You don't have a choice. The papers are already filed. The lawyers have been paid. When I die, everything becomes yours. But why? I mean, I'm grateful, I really am. But why me? Eleanor smiled, and for the first time she looked peaceful. 7 years ago, I was at the lowest point of my life. My marriage was falling apart. I felt worthless, unloved, invisible. And then I crashed my car and ended up in a creek, and I thought, this is it. This is how I die. Alone and unwanted. She reached out and took my hand. Hers was so thin, so fragile, but her grip was firm. And then you appeared. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know if I was rich or poor, good or bad. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped. You made me feel like my life mattered, like I was worth saving." Tears were running down my face now. "Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Eleanor asked. "In all my years dealing with thousands of people in business and society, you're the only person who ever showed me pure human kindness. No agenda, no expectations, just kindness." She released my hand and sat back in her wheelchair. "I saw your name in the newspaper a few weeks ago, the article about the Williams catering lawsuit. I wanted to reach out then, but I wasn't sure how. And then Thomas did some research and learned what had happened, that you'd lost everything." "You didn't hire a private investigator?" I asked, thinking of the original story I'd read online. "No, just basic public records. The lawsuit was public. The business closure was public. I don't believe in invading people's privacy, but I do believe in helping people who deserve help." She gestured to the folder in my lap. "Grace, whether you like it or not, in 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to be a very wealthy woman. I'm telling you now so you have time to prepare, time to think about what you want to do with your life." I sat there, staring at the documents, trying to process everything. This morning I'd woken up in my car with $379.75 to my name. Now this stranger, this woman I'd saved 7 years ago, was telling me I was going to inherit $50 million. "There's one more thing," Eleanor said softly. "Something you should know before you make any decisions about your future." She rang a small bell on the table beside her. Thomas appeared immediately. "Thomas, would you bring in the other file, the one marked Williams family?" My stomach dropped. "You said you didn't investigate me." "I didn't investigate you, but after I read about your business in the newspaper, I did make some phone calls. Public records, mostly. I wanted to understand your situation." Thomas returned with another folder. This one had my name on it. Eleanor opened it carefully. "I know about your daughter, Jessica. I know she lives at 1847 Brookhaven Drive. I know her husband, Brandon, works at Mercer & Doyle as an investment banker." She pulled out several documents. "And I know that on November 7th, 2 days ago, you went to their house asking for help." My face burned with shame. "How could you possibly—" "I have a friend who lives in that neighborhood. When I asked about your daughter's address, she mentioned she'd seen a woman matching your description at that house. Older woman, looked distressed, left crying." Eleanor looked at me with such kindness that it hurt. "Grace, I'm not telling you what to do about your family. That's your decision. But I want you to know something. When people find out you have money, they're going to remember they love you." She closed the folder. "In the envelope I gave you, I've written some thoughts about that. Some things I learned the hard way about money and family. I hope you'll read it with an open mind." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. "Thomas will give you a check for $300 as promised, but I'd like to give you something else as well." She pulled out her checkbook and wrote carefully, her hand shaking slightly. Then she tore off the check and handed it to me. It was for $5,000. "This is not part of the inheritance. This is just to help you right now. Get a decent hotel room. Buy some groceries. Take care of yourself. You don't have to sleep in your car anymore." I stared at the check, tears blurring my vision. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take care of yourself. Say you'll be kind to yourself the way you were kind to me. I stood up, and Eleanor stood too, slowly, painfully, leaning heavily on the arms of her wheelchair. I stepped forward and hugged her, gently, careful not to hurt her fragile frame. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." "Thank you," she whispered back, "for saving me." Thomas walked me back to my car. He handed me an envelope with the $300 in cash, along with his business card. "Mrs. Hartfield has arranged for you to stay at the Willowbrook Hotel for the next month," he said. "It's already paid for. There will be a room key waiting for you at the front desk under your name. She didn't have to. Mrs. Hartfield insists. She wants you to be comfortable." He opened my car door for me. "Mrs. Williams, I've worked for Mrs. Hartfield for 23 years. She's the finest woman I've ever known. What she's doing for you, it's not charity. It's not even gratitude. It's recognition. She recognizes something in you that's very rare." "What's that?" "Genuine goodness." I sat in my Honda in that beautiful driveway for a long time, holding the check for $5,000 and the envelope Eleanor had given me. $50 million. My daughter had turned me away 2 days ago. Now I was going to inherit more money than I'd ever dreamed of. I thought about opening Eleanor's letter, but she'd asked me to wait, so I tucked it carefully into my purse. Then I started the car and drove toward the Willowbrook Hotel. For the first time in 3 months, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow, but I was confused, and I was angry, and I was wondering what would happen when Jessica found out. I had a feeling I was about to find out what kind of person my daughter really was, and that scared me more than being homeless ever had. Eleanor Hartfield died on November 14th, 2024, at 3:47 in the morning. Thomas called me at 6:15 a.m. I was in my hotel room at the Willowbrook, a beautiful suite with a king-sized bed, a sitting area, and windows that looked out over a garden. I'd been sleeping in a real bed for 5 nights, and it still felt like a luxury. Mrs. Williams, I'm sorry to inform you that Mrs. Hartfield passed peacefully in her sleep early this morning. I sat down on the edge of the bed, feeling like something heavy had settled on my chest. Was she in pain? No, she was at peace. She'd been saying goodbyes to her family yesterday. She knew it was time. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, holding the phone. I'd only known Eleanor for 5 days. 1 meeting, really. But in that 1 meeting, she'd seen me in a way that no one else had in months. She'd seen me as someone worth saving. The funeral was held on November 18th at Riverside Memorial Chapel. Thomas had told me it would be private, immediate family only, but that I was welcome if I wanted to come. I went, but I stayed in the back. The chapel was small and elegant. Maybe 30 people attended. I recognized David and Patricia from the photographs Eleanor had shown me. David was tall, handsome in an artificial way, wearing a black suit that probably cost $3,000. Patricia was beautiful, blonde, thin, dressed in designer morning clothes that somehow managed to look fashionable. They both cried during the service. I wondered if the tears were real. I didn't approach them. I didn't sign the guest book. I just sat in the back row and said my own private goodbye to a woman who'd changed my life in the span of 1 conversation. After the service, as people were filing out, Patricia's voice carried across the chapel. Can't believe she waited this long to tell us the estate planning had changed. I mean, who does that? David's response was quieter, but I could still hear him. The lawyer said the will reading is Friday. I'm sure everything's fine. Mom always threatened to cut us off, but she never actually did it. I left before they could see me. The will reading was scheduled for Friday, November 22nd at 10 a.m. at the offices of Peterson and Hayes, attorneys at law. Thomas had called to confirm I needed to attend. There were additional documents that Eleanor wanted distributed, things that couldn't be handled through normal legal channels. The law office was downtown, on the 14th floor of the Riverside Tower, the kind of place where the furniture was older than most of the lawyers, and the receptionist spoke in hushed, respectful tones. Mrs. Williams? They're ready for you in Conference Room A. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city. A massive mahogany table dominated the center of the room. And sitting at that table, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else, were David and Patricia Hartfield. They both looked up when I walked in. Their expressions were identical, confusion mixed with irritation. "Who's that?" Patricia asked, not bothering to lower her voice. The lawyer, James Peterson, according to the nameplate on the table, stood and extended his hand. "Mrs. Williams, thank you for coming. Please have a seat." I sat down at the opposite end of the table from Eleanor's children. David was staring at me with open curiosity. Patricia had already gone back to checking her phone. "Now that everyone's here," Peterson began, "we can proceed with the reading of the last will and testament of Eleanor Marie Hartfield." He opened a leather folder and pulled out several documents. Mrs. Hartfield made some significant changes to her estate planning in the weeks before her death. The previous will, dated March 2021, left the bulk of her estate divided equally between her 2 children. David leaned forward slightly. The new will, executed on November 1st, 2024, supersedes that document entirely. "What do you mean, supersedes?" Patricia asked, finally looking up from her phone. Peterson adjusted his glasses and began reading in that measured, emotionless legal tone. "To my son David, who has built 3 failed businesses on my money and currently owes $200,000 to various creditors, I leave the sum of $100,000. This should be sufficient to pay down his debts and start over, should he choose to do so responsibly." David's face went white. What the hell? Peterson continued without pause. To my daughter, Patricia, who has called me 16 times in the past 3 years, each time to request money for personal expenses, I leave the sum of $100,000. Perhaps this will be enough to purchase the happiness that material possessions clearly haven't provided so far. Patricia shot to her feet. This is insane. She can't do this. I assure you, Ms. Hartfield, your mother was of completely sound mind when she executed this document. We have medical evaluations from 3 separate doctors confirming her mental competency. Then who gets everything else? David demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Peterson turned to me. The remainder of Eleanor Marie Hartfield's estate, valued at approximately $49.8 million, including all real property, investments, business interests, and personal effects, is left to Grace Marie Williams. The silence was so complete I could hear the air conditioning humming through the vents. Both David and Patricia stared at me like I'd just materialized out of thin air. Who the hell is Grace Williams? Patricia finally asked. Peterson consulted his notes. According to the documentation provided by your mother, Mrs. Williams saved her life 7 years ago in an automobile accident on Route 12. An accident? David's chair scraped against the floor as he pushed back from the table. Our mother leaves $50 million to a stranger because of a car accident 7 years ago? I didn't ask for this, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken since entering the room. Patricia rounded on me. So what? You did what any decent person would do, and now you think you deserve our inheritance? I didn't know who your mother was when I helped her. I didn't know she was wealthy. I didn't know anything except that she was drowning. David slammed his hand on the table. Nobody gives away that kind of money to a stranger. What's your angle? What did you do to manipulate her? Nothing. I met your mother exactly once before she died, 2 weeks ago. Then how? Patricia started, then stopped herself. Peterson cleared his throat. Your mother was very thorough in her documentation. There are additional letters she asked me to distribute. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it, then gave similar envelopes to David and Patricia. She requested that these be opened and read aloud in everyone's presence. My hands were shaking as I opened my envelope. Inside was a single sheet of Eleanor's letterhead, her handwriting shaky but legible. I read aloud. Grace, if you're reading this, then David and Patricia have just learned that their years of neglect and entitlement have finally caught up with them. They're probably accusing you of manipulation, suggesting you tricked a dying woman into changing her will. Don't let them. You earned this inheritance 7 years ago when you risked your life for a stranger, but you've proven you deserve it every day since by living with integrity and kindness, qualities my children never learned despite my best efforts. I'm not angry with them. I'm just disappointed. And I hope that this decision will finally teach them that love and loyalty aren't automatic. They have to be earned. Take care of yourself, Grace. You deserve every good thing coming to you. I looked up to see David and Patricia staring at their own letters with expressions of shock and fury. David's hands were trembling as he read aloud. To David, your gambling debts currently total $203,000. You've borrowed against your trust fund 3 times, maxed out 17 credit cards, and forged my signature twice to access funds you had no right to touch. I've attached the private investigator's report for your reference. I hope $100,000 will be enough to start fresh, if you choose to use it wisely. His face was scarlet. She had me investigated? Patricia's voice was shaking with rage as she read her own letter. To Patricia, in the past 3 years, you've spent over $400,000 on clothes, jewelry, and cosmetic procedures while claiming to be a struggling artist. You've never sold a single painting, never held a job for more than 3 months, and you've been living entirely off money you guilted me into giving you. The documentation is attached. I hope $100,000 teaches you the value of money you actually earn yourself. She crumpled the letter in her fist. This is character assassination. This is truth, Peterson said calmly. Your mother was very thorough. David turned to me, his face twisted with rage. You did this. You poisoned her against us. I met your mother 2 weeks ago, I repeated. For 1 hour. Whatever decisions she made them herself. Then how did she know about our... David stopped himself, apparently realizing that finishing that sentence would be an admission. Your mother loved you, I said quietly. But love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. She was trying to help you. She just didn't know if you'd let her. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes, covering the technical details of the inheritance, the transfer of assets, the legal procedures. But the real drama was over. David and Patricia left without saying goodbye, their faces set in identical expressions of fury and disbelief. As I walked to my car afterward, my phone rang. Jessica. I stared at her name on the screen for 3 rings before answering. Hello? Mom! Oh my God, Mom, I just heard! Her voice was breathless, excited. Is it true? About Eleanor Hartfield? Word traveled fast in Atlanta. I wondered who'd called her. Probably someone who worked at the law firm or a friend of a friend who'd been at the funeral. It's true. $50 million. Mom, I can't even... that's incredible. There was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Not quite greed, but something close to it. Calculation. Yeah, I said. It's incredible. Listen, Mom, Brandon and I were talking and we feel terrible about the other day. We were stressed, overwhelmed. We said some things we didn't mean. We'd love to have you over for dinner tomorrow night, to celebrate, and to apologize properly. 24 hours ago, these same people had told me they didn't have the emotional bandwidth to help their homeless mother. Now they wanted to celebrate. That's very kind of you, I said carefully. So you'll come? Tomorrow at 6 o'clock? Let me think about it. Of course. Take your time. We'll be here whenever you're ready. After hanging up, I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at nothing. Then I remembered Eleanor's envelope, the one she'd given me during our meeting, the one she'd asked me to open after she died. I pulled it out of my purse and carefully tore it open. Dear Grace, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I suspect your family has suddenly remembered how much they love you. I didn't surveil you. I didn't record anyone. I don't believe in invading privacy. But I am a good judge of character, and I've seen this pattern before, many times. When people know you have money, they remember all the reasons they should be close to you. Old grudges disappear. Past neglect is forgotten. Suddenly, you're important again. I'm not telling you what to do about your family. That's your decision and yours alone. But I am asking you to pay attention. Watch their eyes when they look at you. Listen to what they say when they think you're not paying attention. Notice whether they ask about you, how you're feeling, what you need, if you're okay, or if they only ask about what you can give them. You showed me pure humanity when I was a stranger in a creek. Don't let people take that gift from you by making you cynical, but also don't let people take advantage of that gift by pretending their sudden affection is real. Here's what I learned in my 71 years. You can love someone and still maintain boundaries. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself. You can be kind without being a fool. Whatever you decide about your daughter, make sure it's a decision you can live with. Not what she wants, not what society expects, what you can live with. You deserve to be treated with dignity. Never forget that. With deep gratitude and respect. Eleanor, I read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it back in the envelope. Then I called Jessica back. I'll come to dinner tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Oh, Mom, that's wonderful. We're so happy you... But I have some conditions. Jessica paused. Conditions? I want you to be honest with me. Completely honest. About everything. Can you do that? Of course. Of course we can be honest. We've always been honest with each other. We both knew that was a lie, but I let it pass. Then I'll see you tomorrow, November 23rd, 6 o'clock, 1847 Brookhaven Drive. I arrived exactly on time, carrying a bottle of wine I'd bought at the grocery store. Not an expensive one, $12.99. I wanted to see if they'd notice, if they'd comment. Sarah answered the door. No, Jessica. I had to remind myself. My daughter's name was Jessica. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something that probably cost $300. Her hair was freshly done, makeup perfect. Mom! She embraced me, holding on just a little too long. I'm so happy you could come. We have so much to talk about. The house looked different, cleaner, more organized, like they'd spent hours preparing for an important guest. The dining room table was set with their good china, the Wedgwood pattern I'd given them as a wedding gift 8 years ago. Candles flickered in crystal holders. Classical music played softly in the background. It was the kind of effort they'd never made for regular family dinners when I was just their broke mother. Brandon appeared from the kitchen wearing khakis and a button-down shirt. Casual, expensive. Grace, Come in, come in. Can I get you something to drink? We have that Chardonnay you like." I'd never expressed a preference for any particular Chardonnay, but I didn't correct him. "Just water for now, thank you." Jessica took my arm, guiding me toward the living room. We thought we'd sit and talk before dinner. There's so much catching up to do. We settled into their expensive furniture. Jessica and Brandon sat together on the sofa, a united front. I sat in the armchair across from them. For a moment, nobody spoke. They kept glancing at each other, some kind of silent communication I wasn't supposed to notice. "So," Brandon finally said, his voice carefully casual. "This inheritance thing, that's really something." $50 million, Jessica said, shaking her head like she couldn't quite believe it. "I can't even imagine having that kind of money. What are you going to do with it all?" "I haven't decided yet." Another glance between them. Jessica leaned forward, her expression earnest. "Mom, before we go any further, Brandon and I need to apologize. For the other day, we handled that situation terribly." "We were stressed," Brandon added quickly. "My job has been insane, and Jessica's been dealing with the kids' school issues. We weren't thinking clearly." Jessica nodded vigorously. "The truth is, we were trying to protect you. We knew how proud you are, how independent. We thought if we offered to help right away, you'd feel like a charity case." "It was tough love," Brandon said. "We wanted you to know we believed in your ability to bounce back on your own." I took a sip of my water and studied their faces. They looked so sincere, so concerned. Their eyes were wide with what appeared to be genuine regret. If I hadn't read Eleanor's letter, I might have believed them. "That's very thoughtful," I said. "We've always believed in you, Mom," Jessica said. "You raised me to be strong, independent. We just wanted to honor that." Brandon reached over and squeezed Jessica's hand. "Family is the most important thing in the world. We never want you to doubt that we love you." "Of course," I said. "Family is everything." They both relaxed visibly. Jessica's smile brightened, the kind of radiant expression she used when she got her way about something. "So tell us about Eleanor Hartfield," she said. "What was she like?" I described my meeting with Eleanor, leaving out certain parts. I told them about the accident 7 years ago, about pulling her from the creek, about how grateful she'd been. "You saved her life," Brandon said, something like pride in his voice. "Of course she wanted to reward you." "It's like something out of a movie," Jessica added. "The hero getting their just reward." Dinner was elaborate. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, scalloped potatoes, fresh bread. All presented beautifully, like something from a restaurant. Jessica had never cooked like this for me before, not once in 35 years. We made small talk during the meal. They asked careful questions about my plans, offered suggestions about financial advisors and investment strategies. Jessica mentioned a charity she supported, something about literacy programs for underprivileged children. "Philanthropy is so important when you have means," she said. "It's a way of giving back, of making a real difference in the world." "We could help you set something up," Brandon offered. Jessica has connections in the nonprofit world. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee. That's when Jessica brought out the photo album. "I was going through some old pictures," she said, settling beside me on the couch. "Look at this one." It was from her wedding, all of us smiling for the camera. Robert had still been alive then. He looked so healthy, so happy. "We looked so happy," Jessica said softly, running her finger over the photo. "Family is everything, isn't it?" She turned the pages slowly. Holidays, birthdays, graduations, all the moments when we'd been together, when everything had seemed normal. "I know we haven't been as close as we should be," Brandon said from his chair. "Life gets busy. People get caught up in their own problems. But at the end of the day, we're family. That's what really matters." Jessica closed the album and looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I hope you can forgive us, Mom, for not being there when you needed us. We want to do better. We want to be a real family again." "We want you in our lives," Brandon added. "The kids miss their grandmother." It was a beautiful performance, really beautiful. I almost believed it myself. Then I noticed something on the corner of their coffee table, partially hidden under a magazine. A letter, white envelope, return address, Riverside Academy, and another one beneath it, from Wells Fargo Bank. "Excuse me for a second," I said, standing up. "Could I use your bathroom?" "Of course," Jessica said. "You know where it is." But instead of going to the bathroom, I walked past the coffee table and carefully moved the magazine aside. The letter from Riverside Academy was a tuition notice. Past due amount, $8,750. Final notice before dismissal. The letter from Wells Fargo was a mortgage statement. 4 months past due. Total amount owed, $12,400. Foreclosure proceedings will begin if payment is not received by December 15, 2024. When I came back to the living room, Jessica and Brandon were whispering to each other. They stopped immediately when they saw me. I sat back down and looked at my daughter. "Jessica, why didn't you let me stay?" "The real reason." She blinked, caught off guard. "Mom, I told you. Brandon's mother, your mother-in-law wasn't coming that weekend. We both know that." Jessica glanced at Brandon, panic flickering across her face. "The truth is," Brandon said slowly, "we were going through some financial stress. My job review was coming up and—" "You're 4 months behind on your mortgage," I said quietly. The color drained from both their faces. "How did you—" "The mail on your coffee table." Jessica stood up abruptly. "Mom, that's private. You had no right to let me sleep in my car while you pretended everything was fine." Silence. Brandon leaned forward, his face in his hands. "We're drowning, Grace. We've been drowning for over a year." "Then why didn't you just tell me that?" I asked. "Why didn't you say, 'Mom, we're struggling too. We want to help, but we can't'? Why make me feel like I was the problem?" Jessica sank back onto the couch, tears running down her face now. Real tears this time. "I was ashamed," she whispered. "We look so successful. This house, the cars, the private school, but it's all falling apart. We're 1 paycheck away from losing everything." "Brandon's bonus didn't come through last year," she continued, "and the year before that. But we didn't change our spending. We kept trying to maintain appearances, and now we owe $43,000 on credit cards. The kids' tuition is overdue. The mortgage is about to go into foreclosure. When you showed up at our door," Brandon said quietly, "I wanted to help you. God, I wanted to help you. But I was terrified you'd see the truth, that we're failures. So you made me leave," I said. "And then, when you heard about the money, you decided to try again." Jessica looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. "We needed you to forgive us. We needed another chance." I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 envelopes. I'd prepared them that morning. "These are for you," I said, handing one to Jessica and one to Brandon. Jessica opened hers first. Inside was a cashier's check for $25,000. Brandon's envelope contained the same. "Mom," Jessica whispered. "What is this?" "It's enough to catch up on your mortgage and your kids' tuition. It's enough to give you some breathing room." "Why would you give us this after everything we did?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She looked exhausted, scared, desperate. "Because I love you," I said, "and because I understand what it's like to be drowning. But love doesn't mean I have to pretend this didn't hurt." "Mom," "Jessica, listen to me. I'm giving you this money because you're my daughter, not because you apologized, not because you invited me to dinner, because you're my family, and family helps each other." But, I continued firmly, "I'm not giving you anything else until I see real change. Not more money, not my time, not my trust. Those things have to be earned." Brandon was crying now too. "We don't deserve this." "No, you don't, but Eleanor taught me something important. You can be kind without being a fool. You can forgive without forgetting. You can love someone and still maintain boundaries." I stood up, gathering my purse. "I need time, Jessica. Time to heal from what happened. Time to figure out who I am now. Time to decide what kind of relationships I want in my life." "Mom, please don't leave like this." "I'm not leaving angry. I'm leaving honest. When you're ready to have a real relationship with me, one built on truth instead of need, you call me. But until then, I need space." Jessica stood up, wiping her eyes. "How will I know when you're ready?" "You'll know because I'll tell you. But it won't be next week or next month. It might be a long time. And that's okay. Some things are worth the wait." I walked to the front door. Behind me, I heard Jessica say softly, "Thank you, Mom, for the money and for seeing us." "I've always seen you, baby," I said without turning around. I just needed you to see me too. 6 months later, I'm sitting on the porch of my house at 423 Willow Lake Road, watching the sunrise over the water. The house isn't a mansion. It's 2,400 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. I paid cash for it, $425,000. No mortgage, no debt, no one who can take it away from me. The inheritance was finalized in January. After taxes and legal fees, I ended up with $32.7 million, more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I kept Eleanor's business interests running, hiring good people to manage what I didn't understand. The real estate holdings, the investment portfolios, all of it. But I also started something new, the Grace Williams Foundation for Women Over 50. We provide grants to women who've lost everything, through divorce, business failure, medical bankruptcy, whatever, and need help starting over. Last month, we helped 17 women. This month, it'll be more. I also volunteer at the Atlanta Women's Shelter 3 days a week. I cook meals for women who remind me of myself 6 months ago. Women who've lost everything but haven't lost themselves. My phone rings. I already know who it is. Hi, baby. Hi, Mom. Jessica's voice is tentative, careful. Is this still okay? Calling on Sunday mornings? It's always okay. We've been talking every Sunday for the past 3 months. Just phone calls. Nothing in person yet. She tells me about the kids, about Brandon's new job. He left investment banking and became a high school math teacher, about their therapy sessions. She doesn't ask for money. She doesn't ask for anything except the chance to talk. Sophie wants to know if you'd like to come to her piano recital next month. My heart squeezes. I'd love to. Really? Really. After we hang up, I sit on the porch for a while longer, drinking my coffee. There's a photo on the table beside me, Eleanor and me taken by Thomas during our meeting. I didn't know he'd taken it until he sent it to me after she died. In the photo, Eleanor is smiling, really smiling. And so am I. I drive to Riverside Memorial Cemetery once a month. I bring flowers and sit by Eleanor's grave, telling her about my life, about the foundation, about Jessica. Today is one of those days. I place the flowers, white roses, her favorite, on the headstone. Thank you, I say to the granite marker. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for the second chance. Not just the money, the chance to remember who I am. The wind rustles through the oak trees overhead. I learned something, Eleanor. At 62 years old, I learned that the hardest thing about losing everything isn't the poverty. It's the invisibility. It's watching people look through you like you don't matter anymore. I trace her name on the stone with my finger. But you saw me, and you taught me to see myself again. As I walk back to my car, my phone buzzes. A text from Denise, my best friend. Coffee this week? My treat. I smile and text back. How about my treat? I've got a story to tell you. I drive home slowly, taking the long way around the lake. The sun is higher now, turning the water gold. At a stoplight, I see a woman standing on the corner with a cardboard sign. Homeless. Anything helps. She's about my age. Gray hair, tired eyes. I roll down my window and hand her a card. The Grace Williams Foundation, I say. We help women start over. Call the number on Monday. We can help. She stares at the card, then at me, tears filling her eyes. Thank you. No, I say. Thank you for letting me see you. The light turns green and I drive on. I've learned something these past 6 months. Something Eleanor tried to tell me, but I had to learn myself. The greatest victory isn't revenge. It isn't even justice. It's peace. It's waking up in the morning without fear. It's having the freedom to choose who you spend your time with, who you help, who you love. It's being kind without being a fool. And most of all, it's knowing that your worth isn't determined by your bank account, your family's opinion, or your success. Your worth is determined by how you treat people when no one's watching, how you respond when life breaks you, how you rise when everyone expects you to stay down. Eleanor saw that in me 7 years ago in a muddy creek, and now, finally, I see it in myself. I pull into my driveway, park the car, and walk up to my porch. Inside, I can hear my phone ringing. It might be Jessica. It might be the foundation. It might be someone who needs help. But right now, in this moment, I just stand on my porch and breathe. The air smells like lake water and pine trees. The sun is warm on my face. I'm 62 years old. I've lost everything and found it again. I've been invisible and been seen. I've been broken and become whole. And tomorrow, I'll wake up and do it all again. One day at a time, one kindness at a time, one second chance at a time,